Welcome to Talks with Dr. Gupta and friends. We are standing at the epicenter of a structural regime shift in global healthcare. Between now and 2030, the pharmaceutical industry faces a wall of loss of exclusivity events unprecedented in economic history. We call it the Great Patent Cliff. More than $230 billion in annual brand revenue, covering nearly 200 drugs and over 69 flagship blockbusters, is set to lose patent protection. For legacy pharma, this is not a cyclical dip. It is a fundamental rewiring of corporate balance sheets. When a traditional small molecule drug loses patent defense, generic entry strips away up to 90% of its market share within 12 months. Biologics experience a slightly slower decay. But make no mistake, biosimilar competitors are launching aggressive pricing campaigns backed by evolving regulatory tailwinds. Yet, every structural threat creates an equally massive capital opportunity. While legacy revenue expires, a radical technological shift is filling the void. We have entered the era of computational biology. In 2026, artificial intelligence is no longer just an early-stage discovery tool. Generative AI engines and physics-based design platforms have pushed machine-designed molecules directly into Phase 2 and pivotal Phase 3 clinical trials. Platform leaders like Isomorphic Labs, powered by AlphaFold structural engines, alongside Recursion Pharmaceuticals with its cellular mapping OS, and In Silico Medicine with its end-to-end pharma.ai platform, are fundamentally shortening the discovery timeline. At the same time, we are witnessing a permanent shift toward genomic and RNA therapeutics, led by pioneers like CRISPR Therapeutics and Beam Therapeutics. Modern biopharma is moving away from brute force chemical screening toward precision-targeted molecular editing. The companies that master this convergence of frontier AI, genomic targeting, and fast clinical execution will win the decade. The companies that rely on legacy monopoly pricing without pipeline defense will see their market caps severely tested. To understand who survives, we must evaluate how megacap heavyweights are navigating this terrain today. We are witnessing an arms race where pure balance sheet scale dictates survival. Look at the Titan class. Eli Lilly has soared to a $1.1 trillion market cap on the back of its metabolic revolution. Driven by tirzepatide marketed as Zepbound for obesity and Mounjaro for diabetes, Lilly is projected to generate $48 billion in operating cash flow next year. They are doubling down on next-generation oral incretins like retatrutide and neurodegeneration assets like donanemab. Novo Nordisk continues its GLP-1 dominance with Ozempic and Wegovy while advancing CagriSema and oral amycretin. Meanwhile, Johnson & Johnson sitting at a massive $600 billion valuation, and Roche are utilizing bispecific antibodies, neuro-oncology platforms, and subcutaneous delivery systems to shield revenues on blockbusters like Darzalex and Tremfya. In stark contrast, Merck faces extreme exposure to the patent cliff, with Keytruda, the single best-selling drug on Earth, generating $30 billion annually. With core patents expiring near 2028, Merck is aggressively deploying capital into subcutaneous reformulations like Keytruda Klex, while acquiring targeted antibody drug conjugate platforms. Pfizer navigating post-pandemic normalization and an upcoming patent expiration on Eliquis spent $43 billion to acquire Seagen, establishing a massive footprint in precision oncology. Nothing illustrates the desperation for scale better than the blockbuster headline sending shockwaves through Wall Street, reported merger discussions to merge British titan AstraZeneca with US giant Bristol Myers Squibb into a $400 billion juggernaut. Consider the paradox driving this deal. AstraZeneca is currently a star performer, generating nearly $59 billion in revenue with 200 experimental drugs in development. CEO Pascal Soriot laid out a clear roadmap to hit $80 billion in sales by 2030. Yet AstraZeneca faces an organic cash flow gap when matched against trillion-dollar monsters like Lilly. On the other side sits Bristol Myers Squibb. BMS is trading at a depressed 10 times forward earnings because it is staring down a catastrophic patent cliff. Almost half of BMS's total revenue, anchored by blood thinner, Eliquis, and cancer immunotherapy, Opdivo, expires before 2030. BMS previously spent $74 billion acquiring Celgene in 2019 to buy growth only to inherit Celgene's own patent cliff. Why would a thriving giant like AstraZeneca risk absorbing a rival losing half its revenue? The answer is ruthless corporate cost cutting. Merging the two would create the world's fourth largest drug maker overnight. Analysts estimate that slashing overlapping operations by 8 to 12% yields $6 billion in annual operational cost savings, translating to $50 billion in present-day value. However, paying a standard 30% takeover premium eats up $40 billion of those savings instantly. Major institutional investors like Rathbones and Union Investment have slammed the talks, warning that mega merger integration chaos routinely cripples R&D innovation. Furthermore, antitrust regulators in Washington and London will scrutinize the deal. AstraZeneca's Imfinzi and BMS's Opdivo are direct checkpoint inhibitor competitors in lung cancer battling Merck's Keytruda. Regulators would force deep divestments, undercutting the rationale of the merger. Politically, UK Prime Minister Andy Burnham and British leadership face the prospect of losing their crown jewel as AstraZeneca expands its US manufacturing footprint and evaluates shifting its primary listing to the New York Stock Exchange. Pascal Soriot, who famously defended AstraZeneca against a £70 billion hostile takeover from Pfizer in 2014, is now navigating the ultimate corporate irony, attempting the largest biopharma acquisition in history to lock in his legacy before retirement. How do we translate these massive corporate battles into an actionable capital allocation roadmap for 2026 through 2030? As strategic wealth managers, we must protect portfolios against patent degradation while positioning for computational upside. We execute this via a disciplined barbell portfolio strategy. On the defensive end of the barbell, anchor core capital in cash flow compounders. These are dominant giants with high barriers to entry, strong pricing power, and organic growth extending beyond 2030. The metabolic duopoly of Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk belongs here, along with select megacaps executing successful subcutaneous reformulations. On the offensive end of the barbell, allocate growth capital to high beta AI and genomic platforms. Focus on enablers building physics-informed AI engines and precise molecular editors. Examples include firms like Isomorphic Labs Partners, Recursion Pharmaceuticals, In Silico Medicine, Exscientia, Relay Therapeutics, Beam Therapeutics, and CRISPR Therapeutics. While individual clinical assets carry volatility, these platforms hold asymmetric upside as cash-rich megacaps scramble for acquisitions to fill pipeline voids. Avoid middle-tier pharma companies trading at low earnings multiples that lack clear AI integration. Also avoid firms that possess high patent cliff concentration and rely on financial engineering over genuine scientific breakthroughs. As we move toward 2030, track 3 critical catalysts. First, Phase 3 readouts for fully AI-designed molecules. Second, regulatory merger decisions by international antitrust bodies. Third, the speed at which biopharma pioneers shift revenues into next-generation modalities. As we stand at this intersection of frontier technology and healthcare, we must address a vital question. How should Gen Z and Gen Alpha position their education and careers for this revolution? The fundamental truth is that biology has officially transformed from an empirical observational science into a computational information science. The legacy boundary between wet lab biology and computer science has dissolved. For the rising generation, success requires mastering a multidisciplinary academic core. First, structural biology combined with quantitative genetics and multi-omics. You must understand biological systems as complex data networks. Second, computer science with an emphasis on machine learning architectures, specifically transformer models applied to protein language modeling and molecular dynamics simulations. Third, physics and physical chemistry, which provide the underlying rules governing molecular docking and structural prediction. To translate this knowledge into high-leverage careers, focus on building an elite skill stack. You need fluency in Python and R for biostatistical modeling, expertise in bioinformatics pipeline engineering, and experience training machine learning models on massive biological data sets. Equally vital is understanding the regulatory and intellectual property frameworks governing AI-designed drugs. The professionals who can translate complex AI model outputs into compliant clinical trial protocols will command immense market value. This convergence is giving rise to high-growth career trajectories. First, AI driven drug discovery analysts. These specialists sit between computational teams and medicinal chemists, validating machine generated leads for commercial viability. Second, bio AI IP and capital strategists. Operating at the intersection of venture capital, patent law, and deep tech, these leaders evaluate platform technologies and execute strategic merger and acquisitions. Third, computational bioinformatician and omics engineers. These scientists build the scalable data pipelines required to process genomic, transcriptomic, and proteomic data at population scale. Fourth, precision medicine data engineers. Professionals who design digital infrastructure connecting real world patient genomics to targeted therapeutic delivery. Fifth, digital twin simulation specialists. Researchers who construct virtual cellular and organ models to simulate drug efficacy and toxicity long before human trials begin. The future of healthcare will not be written by traditional biologists working in isolation, nor by software engineers who lack biological insight. It will be owned by the bilingual operators who master both code and code of life. Thanks for watching Talks with Dr. Gupta and friends. Stay sharp, stay informed, and let's keep analyzing the forces shaping our world.